Hi, everyone. Welcome. Carl Steinbeck here. Sorry for the hold up there. I had a few technical issues, had to work out, but it looks like everything's working good now. I think everybody can should be able to hear me okay. And just want to go over a couple items before I start here. If you notice, I changed my name on the YouTube here as well as on X, and did that recommendation of John and also my nephew Ben. So that I did that because there were some issues with people not being able to pronounce jury trial mentor. For example, Julie Grant had stumbled across that, twisted it around. I think Preston Scott also had that issue in Tallahassee, and I think one other person as well. I think Vinny did as well on Court TV. So they recommend just going by my name because that's what you guys tend to refer to me as. So go ahead. I went ahead and switched it a couple days ago in case you didn't notice that. So I have my name there, and the at part of it is still jury trial mentor, but eventually I'll get rid of that as well. So anyway, that's the reason behind it. And so, first of all, I want to start out by saying if you haven't seen it, please go look at the victim impact statement from Phil Markel. It's really, really compelling and really crushing the amount of suffering that's gone on for the entire Markel family up in Canada, as well as the suffering of the two boys. We cannot forget about that. And that's something that's really going to be damning against these remaining Adelsons as they're prosecuted. And so that's the one silver lining behind it is that's going to be crushing to them, and a jury is just going to be absolutely incensed. As I've said before, they're going to have smoke coming out of the ears. That's just how ridiculously cruel and disgusting that is, and how they're treating these boys. And it just leads you back to the murder, the hate of the Markels by the Adelson. It's like, what the heck did they do? You can see from all the times we've seen Phil and also Ruth Markel, the parents of Danny Markel, what gracious, wonderful people they are. And for them to not have contact with their grandkids, I mean, that's just so far out there. And you really don't see that kind of reckless disregard of consequences when it comes to children in a criminal setting, especially a murder setting. So why that's not reeled in, why people aren't calling them out on that, I just don't get it. It's just really something that it's bad enough the murder happened, they lost their dad, and then they lose all the other Markels combined. It just shows the hatred involved there is just at such a astronomically high level that it doesn't get any really worse than that. And if it doesn't get any worse than that, what does it lead to? It leads to the hatred that's tantamount to having a murderous heart. And I think it's also consciousness of guilt. They don't want the boys talking and maybe slipping up and saying something that could incriminate them. And then next thing you know, law enforcement finds out about it, and then leads to more arrests. So in any event, that's something that I thought was very, very heartbreaking, is that he really highlighted on that. He didn't really even have to talk about Charlie's part of it. He just really focused on Wendy's part of it, which was the denial of grandparent visitation. And so that was just so compelling and heartbreaking. So that's been posted. In case you haven't seen it, that's been posted on my brother John's channel, Brainwashing Children, and also on the Justice for Dan YouTube website, as well as a number of other places as well. And I posted on this channel as well, I believe. So in any event, it's something worth seeing, and it really gets, if that doesn't get your blood boiling to go after the rest of these Adelsons, and then I don't know what will. Yeah, and changing the boys' last names. I mean, it's just so. I mean, it's just bold. It's really bold, wicked, bold, and crazy stuff, right? So that the other thing I wanted to mention was there's some information on Charlie Adelson. Most of you probably heard he got transferred to the Wakilla annex there. And of all things, it's only like 20, 30 minutes outside of Tallahassee. And so in Leon County Jail is his mother, Donna Adelson, pending murder one charges, and among others. And there you have Charlie Adelson just directly south of her, a little bit southeast, and just about 20, 30 minutes is all. And the interesting thing about that, I did some checking around, and from people that know what that facility is like, there's if you look up just that name Wakilla, that is something what they talk about as being like a faith-based and also a behavior modification type enrichment program to help make the inmates turn from their ways, maybe have some remorse and be repenting of what they had done. And but Charlie's in the annex portion of that, so I called to find out if that annex portion of it had that aspect of the programs as well, and that part of it, and it is not. The annex is totally separate in what their program is for. That's where he's at now is somewhat of a what I was told is a, they call it protective management, and that's not to say you can't have violence there. There's been there's been stabbing incidents there as well, and in the past years. So I don't think it's going to be as dangerous as a normal type prison at all. But what we have there is a lot of convicted police officers, any type of law enforcement that are convicted there in Florida. That's who are sent to the annex. So imagine Charlie hanging out with a bunch of cops. And so I think the other thing is that this is a place where they also have the transgendered folks there as well. So he's going to be among those as well. And there can be violence among those people as well. So I think that, to think that he's in protective custody and he doesn't have anything to fear or look over his shoulder, I think that's not quite accurate. I think there is always a chance something could go wrong. And the police officer, I think that's really going to be interesting because a lot of them are on the road to redemption and they want to get the opportunity to maybe redeem themselves and show to law enforcement, hey, like I can help you guys out. So maybe they'll be working over Charlie and getting him to do the right thing and try to flip on other family members. So that's really interesting, and it remains to be seen what actually develops from that. But also, that's a location where they do have. It's most convenient to house the men prisoners that do want to cooperate with the government and flip on other co-conspirators. So that is something that I think is possibly in the works. Not sure. I'm a little bit suspicious that that could actually happen this fast. I think other things, as I said earlier, would have to happen. Like Donna would maybe have to die beforehand before he'd be willing to flip on Wendy, because that would probably be something that Donna would veto. But maybe at the point he just doesn't care. And if he gets the right lawyer and he gets the right pressure and people convince him, it's like, what are you wasting your life for when you have a chance to get out? At least try to get out. There's no guarantee that he's going to be able to cut a deal like for 30 years or something like that for cooperating. But what has he got to lose right now if his appellate lawyer tells him he's got no chance of winning this thing on appeal? So I thought that was very very interesting. And also, if you combine the fact that the last case management hearing for Donna, it did not set an actual trial date. So the fact they didn't set a trial date, that could also be an indicator that maybe they're working a plea behind the scenes. But I'm just skeptical of that. But those are the kind of things that could happen. It could also be they're trying to see how much more evidence is going to come forth from all the search and seizures they did of the computers and phones that they had for for Harvey and Donna when they arrested her. So by the way, if you guys have for any comments, just try to keep it clean. I don't want to see stuff that's really really over the top. And if you do want to talk among each other and chat, that's fine. I don't mind. For example, if you put the score of the game in there, and so I saw some of you did that, so that's perfectly fine. And I'm sort of curious to see what the score is for us that do have some following of the sport. So with that said, what I wanted to talk about tonight was Charlie's indicators, and there is indicators that we've covered before on Wendy. I've not done that really on Donna per se because it's so much parallel to the evidence against Charlie, her son. But if you look at the evidence that you have for Harvey, I think the real thing to look at is his role he plays in the family and what kind of interaction he has with the family as well. So as a prosecutor, I'd be interested in presenting evidence of what kind of role he had in the family, how much control he had over the money. Think about the money that was involved in the murder of this case. A lot of times in crimes, you can solve it by following the money. And so if you follow the money for the murder of Dan Markel, you have Harvey's DNA all over this thing. and uh, and he's not a backseat person that's just along for the ride. He's not an old feeble guy that's pushing a walker, that's hard of hearing and has no ability to take an active role in the murder of Dan Markel. And think about it, what we saw recently on the arrest video there. He's doing pretty good for being his age, right around 80. And so this would have been almost 10 years ago. So he'd have been 10 years younger. So he would have been in a lot better shape back then. And so he perfectly was able to take part in and take an active role in assistance in this murder of Dan Markel. So let's look at the evidence. What kind of evidence would the prosecutor have to overcome the burden of proof, which is beyond a reasonable doubt? And so, like I say, the family dynamics, and if you, I would present all the information to show that him and Donna were really joined at the hip in so many ways. I mean, they even had a joint email account. I think most couples do not have a joint email account. And granted, Donna seemed to have more control over that, but Harvey's always right by her side. And those nasty emails that she sent about what Wendy should do to try to bully over Dan Markel to try to get custody back of the kids and to get them back down to Miami. I think the emails were signed from that joint account and are signed off as love, mom, and dad, or words to that effect. So this is not just something I think that Donna was firing off. It looked like he had total knowledge of what was going on, and they probably talked about the emails together. And so that is very, I think, a telling sign of how much they are joined at the hip. And Donna would not do something without Harvey's blessing. And I think there's more than ample evidence to show he did more than just give a verbal blessing that we can't directly prove, but there's actually more indicators of the direct involvement. And granted, it's more circumstantial in nature, but circumstantial evidence is what you need to convict. In many cases, it's more compelling and persuasive and able to secure conviction that even direct evidence maybe can't. So direct evidence is can be malleable, subject to memory issues, perception, and vision issues or hearing issues, all kinds of different type of issues that can degrade the quality of it. Circumstantial evidence can be very, very compelling and so strong that it leaves no doubt in your mind. And you think back to what Charlie Adelson said on some of his jail calls to his mom when he's talking about that 1 in a million chance of Wendy driving by Trescott there and driving by the murder scene within an hour. He really had some really compelling arguments that I think would be really good for when Georgia to pick up on when she's prosecuting Wendy. And he said it was really reasonable for any juror to think that if it's a 1 in a million odds, she's going to drive by there during that time set, that it looks like she was involved. And if she's involved, then he's involved. And so he said it sounds reasonable, right? So he, I don't think he meant to say that I'm guilty of that. I think he's just talking about from the argument stake and how it looks to the jury. And I think he did, in fact, say that's, how would a juror not think that? So I think he's spot on with that. And he even says at one point, the jury would be stuck on that one point and they can't get off it. And that's how it is with a lot of these, from my experience over many jury trials and over many cases with circumstantial evidence, where I've been a prosecutor, defense counsel. I use whatever evidence you can to make my case, and that kind of evidence, these indicators I'm going to be talking about, it's very compelling and very persuasive. And all you need is really one that the jury sticks their mind to, and everything else is sort of like a waterfall effect. It all comes crashing down on the other side, and it could be like I think a jury would look at this case, look at what's happened to the children, and look at how Wendy had that book set up, and look at how Charlie was involved in this. And then you look at the mom and how she's involved in this. And then you look at all the other family dynamics, and you look at the chatter going on that day of the murder, and you look at how they acted afterwards and how they came up there, went to the synagogue memorial service on that Sunday, the day after Dan was actually murdered. And then they flew out of town the next day, never talked to law enforcement, never called them. Wendy lawyered up, and Harvey and Donna never had an answer to any of the law enforcement folks from that point. They just talked to them in passing there at the synagogue service. And after that, they flew out of there. They lawyered up. They never wanted to talk again. They never had a concern with finding the who murdered Dan Markel, the father of their grandchildren. So the um, the thing is, well, as a prosecutor, I think if this was my case in Texas, I'd be looking at the money angle and really driving that point home. So if you look at the custody fight, that was probably my guess. It's like close to probably $100,000 that Wendy spent fighting this with Dan Markel, fighting the issues that they were having between them, the uh, the bad faith that Dan Markel was accusing her of, which regard to the ability for Dan to have first right of refusal. They had everything set in stone of the hours and days that they're supposed to rotate custody among the children, and Dan was supposed to be able to see the boys and have custody of them in the event Wendy couldn't because she has to go out of town or she has some other activities to attend, or maybe she wants to go on a vacation without the boys during the time she's scheduled to have them that week, that kind of thing. And what was happening is, from what we gather from the information that's been presented, is that those kind of visitations were not being offered to Dan. Instead, she had her friends, or maybe she had Don and Harvey coming up to watch the kids rather than them going to be with their dad. So that's the kind of stuff that he was presenting to the in his motions to the court. And that hearing never actually happened because he got murdered beforehand. But you look at how Harvey, I obviously knew about this kind of stuff. Him and Donna helped fund this stuff. You can't just say it was Donna's money. Harvey was the one that actually earned it through his business, the one actually performing the dental work on the patients. Now, granted, Donna was there working as a manager, office manager, and scheduler and whatnot. So they were part of an integral team, and everything was team, from the work to home to the murder. All that was integral from what the evidence looks like. And so the other thing is, besides $100,000, think about the fact that they were willing to offer a third of $1 million, so 333K, as a inducement for Dan Markel to give up custody of the boys and allow them to be in Miami, where all the Florida Adelsons were located. And so, with that being something that they discussed and are willing to do, that was not actually paid out, but it shows their amount of commitment and enmeshment in this issue of getting the kids down to Florida. And if you really, is the jury really going to think that was just an issue between Wendy and her mom and not the dad? No. If you look at the pattern of practice of behavior of these folks, you're going to see that the dad, Harvey Adelson, was totally involved in that issue as well. And the money would have to come out of their joint accounts. The other thing I'd bring out is the fact that there was a lot of joint accounts between Wendy and her parents. And you're talking about big dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars in different kind of accounts, in different, whether it's cash accounts or stocks. There's a lot of that they could present in trial to show that this family was tightly wound around each other's business and affairs. And so that's another thing I think would help tip the scales and lead to a conviction for Harvey. The other thing is, if you look at the $100,000, roughly was 130, 138,000. There's some there may be some variance to that, but if you look at the $100,000 that was paid to Katie the following morning after they confirmed that the murder had happened, think about what had happened the night before, where we have proof that Donna stopped by the house. She texted Charlie, and they have cell records and locators, excuse me, to show that she was actually at the house there and waiting for Charlie to show up there. And he was coming from, I believe, much further north, like Jupiter area, doing dental work on that Friday. And he shows up, and he says he's 10 minutes out. So he would have met them at that time and being able to get the money. And think about the timing of when he told Katie to show up. That was going to be later on that evening, like around 11 o'clock. So he wanted to get the money first before he showed, before he allowed Katie to come over that night. So, and then you think of the timing of this, the supposed extortion threat to happen as soon as she got there to the house. So he just happens to have, that money available, the moldy money, which we know from the next day is when she received it. Because that night, during the middle of the night, there is when Dan Markel passed away in the hotel, in the hospital there. So it was around 1:30 in the morning. So obviously he wasn't going to pay that money out that night because they didn't know for sure that job that they were hired to do, which is the actual murder, had actually happened at that point. So it didn't sound like he was going to survive from that, and they said he wouldn't survive. But I just don't see Charlie being the type of guy to pay it that kind of money, that huge amount of money for a hit that didn't actually successfully kill somebody. So I think that's that the timing of that, and with Donna also being with Harvey there to go up to the Tallahassee area to see to see Wendy. That's something that is really odd as well, because why would they go that late, around 9 o'clock at night, to to drive by Charlie's house when they're supposed to be going up to see Wendy, who's supposedly grieving the loss of her boy's father. And it's also been put out there that the location where they traveled, and from their house, which was in Coral Springs, to go to Fort Lauderdale, we don't know exactly which location they came from. So if they came from Coral Springs to go by Charlie's house in Fort Lauderdale, that would have been completely out of the way. So why would they go out of the way? They weren't picking up Charlie. He didn't go up there with them. So why would they go out of the way to see Charlie before they go up all the way up to Tallahassee, which is 7.5 hours away? So it would have been even further driving, maybe like 8 hours to drive up there if they're going out of the way to Charlie's place. The other issue is, did they come from that $12,000 to $13,000 a month high-rise condo that they were renting down on South Beach? If they came from there, it's not as far out of the way to stop at Charlie's, but it still is somewhat out of the way. So why would they do that? That begs the question: what were they doing that night? Why would they leave so late as to 9 o'clock to wait until they had to meet Charlie? And then they didn't stay there long, because they got that night around 1 o'clock in the morning or so um, up in Orlando is where they stayed the night, according to their testimony. So I think that's very strong evidence to indicate it as Katie suspected, that the money drop happened that night a couple hours before she showed up. So that's very damning, because you're telling me Harvey didn't know about the money transfer, and did not know that the funds were coming out of their condo or their house, whichever they're coming from. It doesn't make any sense. And you're telling me he didn't know about all that money being washed, over $100,000 being washed and then dried, but not good enough, so it was moldy, as Katie talked about. So it's just something that's very going to be very damning to him when that comes out at a trial. Also, keep in mind that we have the Adelson Institute checks going out to Katie, who never worked there. Some of the checks are written in serial order. Like, I think there was up to 4 at one time that were written out for around 450 some bucks to Katie for never performing work. And the reason why, as the prosecutor argued, there was no work performed. It was at the Dental Institute or any of the other satellite places where Charlie worked, nor would she need to work for Charlie at another satellite place, because those dental offices were already set up. They already had their own staff. Charlie didn't have to bring any staff with him. He just had to bring maybe his practice bag, his dental tools, and show up. And then they already had all the clients scheduled for him, and he would perform his surgeries at that point and then leave. And so he wouldn't need somebody like Katie to be able to assist in that. And because we know from the other workers there at the Adelson Institute, she never actually worked at the Adelson Institute at all. So what was she paid for? And so as a prosecutor, I would see them arguing that this was money that came out of the Adel Institute books. Charlie, as the only dentist working there, obviously would look over his books, obviously look over the payrolls. Granted, you're not talking about $100,000 off their books that was given to Katie, but to enroll a new employee, I don't know if she was actually fully enrolled as an employee. She should have. She certainly wasn't a 1099 contract employee if she's supposedly supposed to be like a staff worker there or something like that. But let's just say she was a 1099. Either way, he's going to be seeing the expenses on the books. And whether she's a W-2 type employer where they have to do payroll withholding tax and there's a lot of, it triggers a lot of extra um, overhead fees to the government that are beyond that which you're paying the employees. So those kind of things, did they pay that? It'd be interesting to see if they did do that, because that would be, as a CPA, New York City had had sent me a letter and saying that's actually tax fraud. You can't use your tax return to be paying hitmen and then claim it as a business deduction. So that'd be very interesting to see if that was done, and that's something I would be interested to prove at trial, that they try to bury this and hide Katie as an employee to not only get away with the murder but also to commit some tax fraud on that. So and then we also have the issue about this Lexus. It was a 1991 Lexus 430, which was their biggest body size vehicle that Lexus sold at the time. It was a low mileage car, around 70,000, in excellent shape, from what I understand. And that was in Harvey's name. And lo and behold, is deeded over to Katie. So why would Harvey do a direct transfer of title to Katie unless both of them were connected to the murder? And we know definitely Katie is, she's already been convicted. And so you're telling me that's just a coincidence? That's too big of another coincidence that a jury is just going to focus on that one thing. That one thing alone, the car without all the money issue, that alone could be enough for a jury to say, you know what, that proves that not only was he not just an accessory after the fact, but we think he was so involved with this that he was involved with it from the beginning. So that's what I think when you combine all this financial information and asset information connecting Harvey to this murder. That's something that's going to be very compelling for the prosecution to bring forward. And but there's more evidence than this. It's not just this kind of financial information. So what we also have is on July 1st, we had that telephone call from Sigfredo to Harvey, and there's like a hang up. It doesn't look like they talked at all, but how would he happen to have Harvey's cell number? Why would he be calling around July 1st? It doesn't make any sense to have Harvey's personal cell number. And so there's something hokey going on there. And as far as another phone call, I think the prosecution could also bring up the Detective Isom interview with Wendy Adelson on that Friday when the murder effort happened. That Wendy was in there for roughly 5 hours, and after about 40 minutes, she was pretty much not considered a suspect at that point. But they did have her call down there. She called her mom, and the mom, basically, the way she sounded, it sounded like she was on speakerphone. But what we never heard was Harvey in the background. So why would she have a speakerphone set up and it's on speaker, and yet you never hear Harvey saying anything? And that, a lot of times that's the way Harvey is, where he doesn't say a whole lot, but Harvey does speak up from time to time. So something it's a tragic news is that supposedly that they're hearing from the first time and had no involvement with. Why wouldn't Wendy be concerned about, where's dad at? Both of you need to sit down. I need to tell you something. Why didn't she say that? And so it just seems like really rehearsed fake kind of stuff. And you would think that also on Donna's end, she would say, "Oh my gosh, this is so terrible. Harvey, get in here. Harvey, come on over here. You got to listen to this. Something terrible happened." You don't hear any of that at all. And then supposedly Roshbaum, I was told, I didn't see it firsthand, but I was told that Roshbaum said that Harvey was in the shower. That's why he wasn't part of that phone call. Well, I mean, you would interrupt somebody in the shower. You'd be freaking out and saying, Harvey, you can't believe what happened. We got to find out from Wendy. And there would be more questions asked. Well, what do you mean he was shot? Who shot him? Where was he shot at? You'd have all these flurry of questions being asked. You'd say something like, well, get up there to the, who's seeing Dan in the hospital? Get over to the hospital. What are you doing at the police station? Wendy, get over there. Go see him. It's something like that. If they really cared about Dan, I think is a normal behavior. And so, but that didn't happen, and they acted very rehearsed. And if you notice that what Wendy said, Wendy never said, well, she made it sound like she was relieved because both her parents sounded surprised. She said both her parents sounded surprised, and yet she never heard anything at all about her dad, Harvey. So how could she speak for both of them? That also leads me to believe it was rehearsed. And I think a jury would see that as well. So that has to do with the phone calls. And I think another key detail is behavioral body language and also words of the defendant, the accused, when somebody's being charged. And I think that if they would canvass the neighbors, the best friends of Harvey, and also Donna, and you'd find like a lot of bizarre stories that just would really help sink their case if you brought them to trial. So a lot of prosecutors, they just don't do that level of detail, and nor do defense attorneys. And what I found from winning cases, even cases I didn't think I had a shot at winning, is those kind of details really mean the difference between winning big or losing big. So I would hope that they would do that. For example, Tamara Demko talks about how and this has happened like I think it was a Saturday or Sunday when she was in. Actually, I believe she went to Detective Isom because she thought there was really suspicious activity by the by Harvey, especially how he was acting at the house there on Aqua Ridge that Wendy lived at. She normally had said that she had, normal conversations leading up to that. She'd been long term friends of Danny, but also she was friends with became friends with Wendy over time. Their numerous years there, and so what happens? She said that Harvey couldn't even look at her in the eye. He was like trying to avoid her. He seemed really shifty and nervous, kind of thing. And that I think is really telling because that shows a consciousness of guilt. So I would hope the prosecutors would bring that kind of information out when they're prosecuting Harvey. And I'm sure there's other more details like that that could come to light on how they acted. I think Rob Adelson, the oldest son, who cut the family off. Think about it. He cut the family off when they acted so strange and bizarre when he asked them details about the murder of Dan Markel. Of course, you're going to ask details. Who did it? What do you think happened? Where were you at? When did you talk to so and so? And you're just going to start having a flurry of questions. And what apparently happened was he was told, "Do not talk about it," and they shut him down. And from that point, he realized you don't act that way unless you're part of the murder. So they acted totally guilty, even among their own son, Robert. And so Robert was listed as a state's witness on this last trial for Charlie. So I really think with any trial for Donna and also Harvey that they're going to bring Robert there and he's going to really set the scene of how things worked and how both parents were joined at the hip. No major decision was ever made in isolation, and the way they treated him when he wanted to know what happened to Dan Markel and just discuss it with him as a normal person would, that he got shut down, and that was something that was forbidden from being discussed there and among their family members. So I think also another indicator is if you look at the political connections that Harvey had, that judge in Broward County, his last name is Weinstein, he had such a close connection to Harvey. And Harvey, keep in mind, had him be the godfather of Wendy. So that's how close of a connection you have. This guy was also state senator. So he had the pull up in Tallahassee. And so the different Democratic connections he would have had back to the state attorney office there with Willie Meggs, that's the kind of stuff that maybe could have given him the feeling of protection, and he's got top cover that way. So I would say that was an inducement to think that they can get away with it. And after all, look how many years we had before Adelson was finally arrested. So I thought that was really telling. I think also the what is suspicious and compelling to look at is Willie Megg's statement that the calls for Adelson to be arrested was this premature and wasn't evidence to go that direction. And he said basically they'll be looking at a lawsuit from the Adelsons if they charged him. So that also makes you think, well, gosh, well, how come the Adelsons haven't sued the state for charging him, right? So the evidence is so overwhelming against him that there's not going to be any lawsuit, and there never will be. So that I think is also another telling sign. And then also we have another indicator, which is a huge one, and it also shows them being joined at the hip, which is Harvey was right there when they're fleeing the country. Harvey was there to say goodbye, leave his whole life in America behind to help flee jurisdiction. So what if you're an innocent man and you didn't know about this thing and you found out your wife was possibly going to be prosecuted. Your son was already being prosecuted and convicted. Would you want to get on a plane with her and flee the country and give up your life here and give up your chance to see your daughter again, your grandkids? Why would you do that? You'd be going, I don't have anything to hide. I don't have any reason to leave. If you're part of it and you want to flee from being prosecuted, then you're on your own, Donna, right? But they're that joined at the hip. He's willing to walk away from it all. And they got everything set up from trust. So they would have had the cash flow coming in, at least to the extent they weren't burning up an attorney's fee. So anyway, I thought that was another compelling point. So with that, I would say that if you have questions on anything I've said, or if you have any other indicators that I haven't touched on, there's other ones as well, but these are the ones I wanted to highlight tonight. So if you had any questions previous to now, I'm going to go to the newest comments here. So just repost them, and I'll try to get to them. And I can't hit all of them, of course, but I'll do my best. Sorry, hold on here. Cat Love is saying, did you talk about all the guilty indicators for Wendy? Yes, that's on a earlier one of the first presentations that John and I had done. So if you look back on the channel, you'll see that. I think it's about 10 months old now. So yeah, we covered some of it. It was a real quick version of it. There's much more details I went into later on Survivor. I got up to number 92 on that, but that one, the one I did for Survivor, that was totally from scratch. That's one I want to even enhance more, because there's many more that we can add to there. So I think that's what you can at least see for right now. Maya is saying, I wish that they would call Robert to testify about his family, but I don't wish the stress it would bring up. Yeah, can you imagine what he's got to live with? And he's completely cut off from the family, just like the Markels are. So what tragedy! All this, all this burning up of relationships, and all this just evil agendas going on that just destroyed family relationships. It's really sad and sick to see. Sundance Spirit is saying, could Harvey check himself into a nursing home in an effort to escape arrest or standing trial? I think that he's too in too good a shape to go to a nursing home to escape that. Maybe if he was in a nursing home in a really bad shape, maybe they'd give him a pass at that. But the way he looked there, I mean, he could go another 15 years potentially. So it's you never know. And I would say that's not something that a lot of prosecutors would take into account. Some might, others wouldn't. But I think what would be interesting is if they would use that as leverage, either just go ahead and charge all the Adelsons at one time. So you just got Wendy and her dad Harvey to go and charge them, and then you see what kind of stress and strain that puts on Charlie to see if he's willing to help mom and dad out by flipping on Wendy. So I think good things are still going to happen, and they're going to be somewhat unpredictable. There's going to be a lot of twists and turns, but it's going to be good things for the state and good things and justice for the Markels. Tennis girl's asking if Donna says her attorney advised her to leave the country, could that trigger a conflict or mistrial? I don't think she's going to come right out and say that at trial. I think because Rashom's representing her, he's not going to go that route. They may just keep that part out where she's talking about Dan saying her to flee. They may blip that out just so Dan doesn't look like he's aiding and abetting something that's a flight from persecution. So I don't think that's going to come out that way. And I've said before, he's not going to be called as a witness by the state. I'm really confident about that. I can pretty much guarantee that. From my experience, anyway, I just wouldn't. I just don't see that happening. Sarah Allen Humboldt saying they took the concept of laundering money very literally. Yeah, they did. I think that's how paranoid they were to try to make this the perfect murder. But there's so many other gaping holes that That's just unreal. Alex is asking, how was the bump not considered entrapment? Well, entrapment is something that law enforcement does to entice somebody to commit a crime that they otherwise wouldn't commit. And if it's over extreme and overreach by the government, then judges can dismiss it. And that was something that I had a case like that one time where there was a prostitute that, and I'd never seen anything like this before. The prostitute was met somebody, met a customer, let's say, and the customer and her agreed to do something, but she wanted to make sure he wasn't a cop, so she asked him to do a certain thing by exposing himself, and the cop actually did that. And then after she said okay, that's when he busted her. So I thought that was the kind of thing that would be entrapment. So here I would say that they already knew that there was criminal activity afoot. There was already a murder involvement that definitely indicated the Adelsons were involved in that. So that's merely saying we want some money. A normal person, they're not asking to commit a crime, because if they would have actually committed the act of giving the money, that in and of itself is not a crime. So that's not typically the entrapment type defense. So entrapment type defense is like you only committed the crime because of the law enforcement inducement, overdue, undue inducement. So in this particular case, if they would have given the $5,000 demanded, um, that's not technically a crime in and of itself. So that's why entrapment, I don't see that being the case, and that's how I interpret it from the states I'm licensed in. Sean Hennings, yeah, that's a good question. Why didn't you? Why do you think Harvey just didn't go to Vietnam? Yeah, I mean I think that's why Donna was so concerned about him getting out to back home. She was so focused on him going back home, and I think she was worried that he was going to do that. I thought she was maybe going to be. Can you imagine that if she would have like been hauled off? He still stands there, and keep in mind you had the Emirates flight attendants right there. What if Harvey would have said, "All right, I'm ready. All my bags are loaded. Let's go." So that would have been really really an amazing thing to see. But he didn't. It didn't happen. But that's something that is yeah. Why wouldn't he have left? But I guess either way, he doesn't have to deal with Donna so much right now. So and he's never going to see her again, and he may see her in court if he goes to testify against her, or he may see her on the maybe through somebody taking a video of her making a statement, her attorney, and then pass it on to Harvey. But they're never going to have a face-to-face hug like they had, a hug and a kiss that they were able to exchange there before she got hauled off. KJ is asking, could I ever interview Professor Jeff Lacoste? It's Lacasse. Lacoste is that's the name of the attorney. The last name, that's the name of the attorney for Katie, Chris Lacaste, Lacoste, the French word Lacoste. Yeah. So I haven't done any interviews yet. I don't think I'm going to do that, and I just don't foresee doing that. Maybe down the road after all these trials are done, I may think of doing something like that. But right now, I'm just trying to do legal commentary. Other shows they can call witnesses and stuff like that. But I would say that a lot of key witnesses, I think those wouldn't want to be involved in YouTube questions by different channels that are covering this. Cubs Win is asking, can Markel's file civil suits against Adelson's for Danny's murder? Absolutely. But the problem is they're judgment proof. They've gotten everything hidden in trusts, and they got that firewall there. So yeah, you could get a conviction, excuse me, not a conviction, but a civil judgment against them. But what good does it do if you can't collect on it? And so I think they just want to let the criminal cases work their way through the system. So that's my estimation of why they don't want to hire lawyers, that they're not going to be able to collect anything, and they actually just have to pay big bucks to lawyers. So how do they come out ahead with that, right? Just have mere sake of having a civil judgment you can't collect on, it doesn't do you any good. Whereas you got a criminal judgment, that's a much higher burden of proof, and yet that's shown that they did it. So they're not getting away with it in that sense. Plus, it can put them in away for life without parole. Yeah, so Linda Mon is saying Charlie had no overhead because he worked out a lot of other people's offices. Yeah, so that's why he didn't need to pay Katie. It was nothing but for the murder. SV74 is asking whether I think Donna or Harvey were surprised that only Donna was arrested. Yeah, I mean, I would think they'd go after them both. I don't know why they wouldn't have. And I mean, at least they went after the search warrant for Harvey. So it's incremental. It's slower than I would like, but at least they're making progress. And we got some more incriminating conversations on the jail calls. So Christina's asking, can they nail him on the money trail alone? All it takes is really one indicator. All right. So one indicator is enough. And you want more than one as a prosecutor, but if you got a really golden nugget one, then that could be enough. On appeals, you might have courts say, well, it's only one indicator, we don't think it's strong enough. That's exactly what happened on the case down there in Tallahassee involving I forget the name of it now, Winchester, Brian Winchester. He flipped on I think his name's Williams, last name's Williams, and he flipped on her, and there really wasn't any information that indicated she was a part of the real planning of it. I think that the most she did was maybe tell him what point he was going to be going to. He went to go fishing that morning, and I mean that's enough to do it. I think that's why the jury convicted him. The Court of Appeals says, well, they sort of split the baby and decided to convict her of leave the conviction stand for is either conspiracy or solicitation. So she wound up doing 30 years on that. So Karina Joy's asking about Harvey signing a lease on a second Miami high rise, Miami, uh, in May of 2014. That's entered in discovery. Yeah, I haven't seen the actual lease yet, but it is right before the murder, right? Because the murder happened in July. So spending I heard it was 80,000 up front and then 12 to 13,000 a month thereafter. And then you don't even technically live there. So it really looks like an inducement for Wendy to live there. And maybe they went down there on weekends and they're trying to make it a family affair. But why would they spend that much money if they didn't know ahead of time that Wendy would be free to live there full time? It's almost like telegraphing the murder's about to happen, just like Wendy's book. It's that strong and compelling. Okay. Esmeralda is saying that she rewatched Charlie's testimony and it sounds even more ridiculous than it did before. I totally agree. And if you look at what I had for the live stream of his testimony, I wound up just talking over him. It was just so ridiculous in the afternoon because I just thought it was so insulting to the jury to listen to that, and I just couldn't stomach it anymore. So rather than just shutting down the live stream and saying this is garbage, it's so insulting. I just couldn't stand to listen to another minute of it. So I just started talking over him. And so you can hear my comments about what I thought about what kind of job Rashbaum was doing. So Maylee, in their past travels, have they ever purchased one trick? We don't know that kind of granular details, Maylee, but I would say that's something that they're gonna, like Rashbaum said, they just went there to clear their minds, and they didn't know how long it's going to take. I mean, that's just such a ridiculous statement, and it's not going to fly with the jury. Tennis girls asking about why do you think the media is staying away from Wendy? And I mean, I think that's case is sort of complex for a lot of those big media stations. I have not seen the 2020 or was it Dateline, those segments, because I heard they didn't cover enough detail and they're sort of glossing over. It's good for people that don't know anything about the case as a first impression to see what's going on, but they don't cover any really details about Wendy, from my understanding. to show her involvement. So that's why I think the case would take so many numerous part series to really show enough details of it. That's why I think they probably haven't gone to that level. And then a lot of people, they just don't spend the amount of time it takes to really know the case to speak with any degree of knowledge and accuracy about it. So it takes a lot of time to really dig out the details. But that's what really makes this case so much different. Is it makes it really people interested in following it and just scratching their head and wondering how could this crime happen? Number one, and number two, how could they be dumb enough to think they could get away with it? And why have they gotten away with this so long? So those are like the really three compelling things. Not to mention, like I say, the ongoing abuse of the boys. I've already said Wendy's going to get arrested right after Donna's conviction. I would hope it'd be sooner, but I think they're just sort of doing it one at a time. Wait till the conviction happens, and then within months of that conviction for Donna. But there's always a potential that maybe Charlie being down there hanging around convicted police officers, law enforcement types, that maybe they'll talk him into rolling over on Wendy. So we'll have to see. The 2 is asking, "Why didn't Charlie go to the memorial service?" Well, the reason being he had to be there to pay the hitman. They wanted to be paid right away, so that's why I that's what I'd argue as a prosecutor, why he had to stay down there. And I don't know if Robert and his wife, Aretha, attended. I mean, they have a busy legal practice, but, so I don't think they were able to make it down there, but, can't say for sure. Mr. Swampy's saying, "I'm an attorney putting myself in the jury for the trial of Harvey. So far, I can't say it's to the stage of beyond a reasonable doubt." Well, a lot of people, when they just hear of this, like the stuff I'm saying tonight, it's totally different than hearing about it in the actual trial. And think about all the attorneys that were saying the same thing about Murdo. And I was just like scratching my head going, what are these guys talking about? They're obviously not criminal law lawyers. So, Mr. Swampy, I assume you're not a criminal law attorney. So, if you don't have experience, even if you have experience with jury trials, if you don't have experience with criminal jury law settings, then I would say that, just wait to see how it bears out, because it's totally different seeing it talked about here or seeing video clips versus actually seeing it in a live court setting. And if you saw the whole family put together and if you saw the way they're acting together, so do you believe Charlie's guilty? And do you believe Donna's guilty? If you believe they're guilty, the jury would have sort of like it would lower the bar. There's sort of a synergy of guilt, if you will, that it's going to look like all of them did it together, and it's going to be easier for them to convict all of them if you have all of them in the firing squad at the same time. So that's why I thought it'd be very good to get these guys to squirm and flip and act out their desperation to try to cut a deal before they get sentenced to life without parole. Katrina's asking, are the checks and Lexus enough to get conspiracy to commit murder? Those are things that, or if you just brought up those things, that's not it. I wouldn't just bring up that. Obviously, besides the murder, you want to bring up and rehash all the stuff the Adelsons were doing. So you want to bring out all the stuff you presented for Charlie and bring up this other stuff I'm talking about that they introduced into trial so far. And I'd also bring out the details about Wendy. I mean, the more you show each of the individual family members' involvement, the easier it is to carry the water and to get a conviction as a prosecutor. That's why I think it's the smartest move to go after them both all at the same time and have a joint trial. Yes, I do think he will be called. He was on the witness list. I think they will do it. Do they have to against Donna? No, but I definitely for sure would do it against Harvey. And I think they would also do it with Wendy. Cat 875 is asking the sense of order arrest. So I've already talked about Wendy. I would say Harvey, I would hope that they do them jointly, but really think my impression, my instincts are telling me they're going to wait one at a time, unless something happens. Like if Charlie says, "I'm tired of being here. Are you guys willing to protect my parents if I bring down Wendy?" And maybe they're having some kind of, potentially they could be having some kind of negotiations like that. Not sure. It's too much speculative at this point. Bayub is asking about Wendy admitted deleting her calendar entries as a habit and practice. Aren't lawyers required to keep their calendars a number of years to maintain malpractice insurance? Um, well, I think she's talking about her personal calendars. I think her office calendar, and she wouldn't have had malpractice insurance. She's working at a clinic, so you don't need malpractice insurance when you're working for the state, even if you're an adjunct professor. So if she's working other jobs or whatnot, a lot of those would pay for malpractice insurance as well. So I think it has to do with her personal entries that they were talking about that she admitted. And I think if I remember correctly, her boyfriend Jeff Lacasse said that she started deleting them like about March of that year. So I can't say for sure. Maybe some of y'all could mention that. Sorry, I got to turn the sound off here. So Sharon Joyce asking, are Robert and his family in touch with the Markel boys? No, I think like I was saying, they're all cut off. If you question their involvement, you're going to be cut off from them. They can't handle it. They don't want to go down that road. MM is asking, do they have hotels booked in Vietnam? If so, how long was it stay? Don't know those kind of details. It might have been a hotel first couple nights or something, but keep in mind Harvey was over there scoping it out. I think this was like their golden parachute plan to escape jurisdiction. That's why when he was talking on the jail calls, he was like, "I should have listened to my gut. Everybody's telling me it's going to work out, but my gut, I should listen to my gut." I think his gut reaction was live in Vietnam and just write it out and just start your dental practice over there and pay off the locals so you never have to worry about an arrest back in the United States. I think that's what he was. I think he's having a lot of remorse over instead of being remorseful with the murder. Yeah, Mr. Swampy. So you're saying the car is pretty good evidence of the payment for murder. So yeah, I think you can see as an attorney that's like payment after the fact for murder. So that could be accessory after the fact. So to get them to actually be a principal to the murder, any aiding and abetting before a murder occurs, however slight, is enough legally to convict. Okay, so the handling somebody a bullet if you know they're going to go intend to shoot somebody, giving somebody gas money if they need gas money to go commit a murder. Technically, that's enough. Now, maybe Court of Appeals like, well, that's it's a little bit sketchy. That's not enough. But you just pile it on as a prosecutor. There's plenty of options here to choose from for the jury, and it's all a totality of it that they can look at and say, you know what, there's no doubt in our mind that this was a joint family affair of the Adelsons that lived in Florida, and so Thunder Road Queen is saying, due to Harvey's age, any chance you tell the whole story to stay out of prison? There's a chance of that. They could call up his attorney Descalzo and say, look, we're going to charge him unless he's willing to come forward and come clean. What's he willing to do? And we're willing to cut a deal, maybe go light on Donna to get Wendy. I mean, there's any number of possible things they could do. So it's always a possibility, but just remains to be seen. That's why there's going to be a lot of interesting twists and turns on this case. Jarrell Reichert is saying, was Harvey's and Adelson Institute records going to be subpoenaed from Dan as Wendy was hiding money? I don't think he was going down the Adelson Institute records that way. I doubt it. Don't think so. Watercolor Mama is asking, there were several references to Harvey's explosive temper. He seems so passive, yet his reputation is to explode. Do you have any specific examples that are on or off the record of his temper? I think that the issue had to do with the way he had to get, what I'm hearing from other references is that there was an issue about Charlie not being able to make it through dental school, either dentist school or podiatry school. And he was basically flunking out, and they got the judge involved, and the judge said that he was able to convince the some connections he had on the board, and Charlie then claimed that he was being harassed by somebody that worked in the administration there at the school, and they sort of used that just to intimidate him and make him go away, and they pushed him on through. And so that was actually in the police records that they said that Harvey said nobody messes with my kids, and he was like really a sort of a threatening type of person that way. So that's the only thing I know of. But there might be others. That's another thing, you might, as a prosecutor, might have the investigators inquire as to what his temperament's like and what his behavior's like. That's off camera. What's he up to over the years, and how does he handle somebody messing with his family? And like Donna said, that that nobody's went over on the Adelsons yet. So Gabrielle said, "There's no way Harvey wasn't complacent. If he was innocent, wouldn't he be like, 'We're innocent, Donna. Let's go to the police and get this straightened out'?" Oh, that's something I wanted to bring up earlier. I forgot about it. So thanks for reminding me. When you think about what Charlie said at his trial about how he whispered that the extortion happened, that's the first time he told his dad was at the restaurant there, the Dolce Vita, when he had. Excuse me, not the Dolce Vita. That was with Katie, but when he had it at the Matsuri Japanese restaurant, when he's talking to Harvey, that he said that he whispered to him about the extortionate effort. And I'm like, you know what? There is no reaction from Harvey at all. Harvey would have flipped out. He goes, "What? There was an extortion? How much money?" I mean, there would have been like loud questions. And if law enforcement was there and they're talking about extortion, why wouldn't you want law enforcement to hear about that? So again, you look at them trying to be talking in code when they think they're being wiretapped, and then they think there might be cops sitting across the table going undercover trying to eavesdrop on them. Why wouldn't you want them to hear that you were extorted? That's your perfect time. If you're afraid of the cops, I mean, that's just so ridiculous. So that's um that's something else that if you look at the amount of time on the tape, or you can't really hear what Harvey's saying, there's not enough time there for that kind of discussion to occur. And Harvey would have raised his voice, and he would have been like, "What the hell? And does mom know about this? Am I the first one you're telling? You never told Wendy, you never told your mom, you're telling me the first time." And they would have said, "No, well, I told mom when it happened." I mean, that just doesn't happen, that Harvey would have been kept in the dark from Donna when there's a threat against their family. I mean, that's just so ridiculous. So no jury would believe that. Yeah, Chloe's mom saying they convicted Robert Dunson. He was half dead at trial. Yeah, I mean, he had the oxygen tubes going through his nose. He was in a wheelchair. I mean, he looked like they wheeled him out of a hospice ward. So yeah, good point. That's one that Roxanne had mentioned to me earlier. Okay, Irene is saying, "I've had patients, quote unquote, hiding in a nursing skilled." That's good to know. Sophia's asking how many check-in luggage do they have? Yeah, I don't know, and I don't know if the baggage went ahead. If they're that close to leaving, you would think that they maybe didn't intercept the bags. So that'd be interesting to see how if they ever got their bags back. because they could, 40 minutes before an international flight, they probably were already underneath the plane, buried under hundreds of other bags, right? As Char's asking if Harvey and Wendy are joining forces to figure out how to avoid being arrested, maybe planning to flee. They could be talking about that, and it could be a realistic situation where you're thinking, why would you stick around here? Why would you wait to get arrested? Why not just leave? I mean, I think that's something they would really try, and I would think that at least talking to their attorneys about it. But on the other hand, it could be cognitive dissonance, and they're just going to say, "Well, we're just going to wait it out. I don't want to try to run," and maybe they're just tired of being on the run. And I think they've never really felt pressure until Charlie got arrested, and that just totally flipped their whole world upside down, and now they have to wonder when they're up next. Yeah, Cessna 101. When the another piece of evidence would be that 2 weeks immediately previous to Dan's murdered, Wendy was at her parents' home cleaning out the bedroom. Yeah. So the other part of that is like the money part of the. Yeah, I should add that as well. The money part of buying the high rise there. That's a lot of money to put forth there. And why would you buy that place if Wendy wasn't going to be moving down there? She's not. They're not going to spend that money. Yeah, I did. I guess I did say that earlier. They're not going to be spending that kind of money though if they didn't expect her to be there full time, right? So I think that's a great nugget to show that he having that kind of money, he would not put that kind of money down for somebody just to spend the few days of the month down there. So, and not even every month would Wendy have a chance to come down there. So, and would they really spend that much time when they had active practice up there? So you're talking about maybe an hour and a half stuck in traffic just to go down there on weekends and nobody else is there for family? I don't think so. Jerry isn't going to believe that for a second. Carolyn A is asking on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think of Roshan's interview on STS? Big mistake, 10, not a mistake, 1. Well, I would say it's it's just really it was really ridiculous what he was saying from what I saw of it. I didn't see all of it. And what I saw was enough to show it's just really a clown show and nothing to be taken seriously. But there was some incriminating stuff I thought that was helpful for the prosecutors to pick up on what their defense is going to be, and it helps them prepare for that. So really, it's a hopeless loser of a case as a defense attorney. So it doesn't matter who you got as a defense attorney; it's going to be a loser of a case. So, in that sense, there was no damage done. But in terms of him thinking he's going to help her out by talking about she's a loving person and all that kind of stuff, I mean, it's just, I would say the odds of even a potential juror actually seeing that are so slim. And so I really think it's not going to really amount to anything except him getting some FaceTime out there. Hey, Mona, good question. If Donna and Harvey left the day after Charlie's conviction, do you think they would still have arrested her? I think that they would probably have gotten out of the country if that's what had happened, if they wouldn't have gotten foreknowledge that they were leaving. And think about it, they were scrambling to get that warrant prepared and signed off by the judge that day, and it took them several hours, if I remember correctly, to get that process. So yeah, if they would have left it right after, I think there would have might have been some tip off that they were there. But if nobody called the state attorney's office and nobody else called it in, I think they might have had more than that one call in to alert them. But I think that, yeah, they could have probably gotten away because think about it, they got within 40 minutes of getting out of there. So if they would have done it right after the conviction, and I think if they were in Italy, why don't they just? I guess they were thinking they were that confident that he was going to win. So, um, what's interesting is that they were never telling Charlie that they're about to leave, right? They're making it sound like we're here for you and all that kind of stuff. Would they'd have been over there in Vietnam, they would have had a real hard time having communication with them, perhaps. Okay, Doria is asking. Harvey asked about Katie at the sushi restaurant. He knew what was going on. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, he was so he was so up to his eyeballs in this thing. Yeah, I've already talked about the Adelson's being judgment proof, so they're not going to be able to get a conviction for wrongful death. And the statute of limitations hasn't run on that, so they could always bring that. But if they're judgment proof, why would you spend the attorney's fees on it? You already got the conviction to show they're guilty. I think it'd be cool law to pass that if you're convicted of murder, that the trust can be dissolved and it can be attacked and severed and assets divided. That's what I think would be a good law. They could call that Markel Act number 2. Bossy Texas Chick is saying, is an offered plea different from a plea bargain? And what do you think Donna would take or make one? It's always a possibility depending on what leverage you give her, put on her, and what you're willing to do to curry something that she would have a benefit for. Like if she's trying to save her own neck and she doesn't care about throwing Wendy under the bus, or maybe she's trying to save Harvey. Maybe they'll say, look, if you plead guilty, we won't go after Harvey, but you're gonna have to agree to flip on Wendy. Would she do that? So plea bargain is basically any kind of haggling going on with the prosecution defense. Either one of them can offer it at any time, and at some point, they may say we don't want to negotiate, back off, and my client's innocent. So those kind of things can happen as well. The other thing, an offered plea is not done in all states, all jurisdictions. What that basically means, you plead no contest. You admit that there's enough evidence based on the indictment or the trial information, whatever the case is, to bind you over and find you guilty. But you're just disagreeing that you're guilty, but you understand there is evidence there sufficient to convict you. So that's what an offered plea is. But that's not, like I said, what the way it's done in all states and all jurisdictions. Yeah, it's ironic saying Robert sounds like he's such a decent human being, which he is, and they wouldn't talk to him about Dan's murder because he's honest. Yeah, I mean, he would have reported to the law enforcement, absolutely, no doubt. Molitrell, yeah, this is a very key thing to highlight, and you're asking what do you think Donna meant by "we're all out to protect you." I bet you have a lot to think about, and that kind of thing about "we're all out to protect you," meaning we did this for you, we did this murder for you, and you were a part of it as well. So you better think about the fact that we could flip on you. You're just as guilty as we are. That's what she was talking about. So it wasn't like a, hey, how come, why can't you why can't you talk to us? Why are you ignoring us? Why are you acting strange? None of that conversation happened. This is like, you know what? We're all joined at the hip on this kind of thing. And for you to act like you're so sweet and innocent and not guilty and leaving us hanging high and dry. Because think about it, she was what really got her is that she didn't even ask about Charlie. She never had any concerns about him whatsoever. And it's not talking about the case. Say, oh, I'm so sorry. That's so upsetting, Mom. This is what are we going to do? We thought he was going to win. He's not guilty of this. There's none of that. She never defended him in his innocence, right? She just had this lawyer written type of statement that said, I told you not to talk about the case. You're trying to talk about the case. So she refers her to her lawyer to call her lawyer if you have any questions. I mean, that's just so bizarre. Jury can see right through that. I'd want to bring that out. Definitely want to bring that up as a prosecutor. Tina Mindful saying they had neighbors, friends, and community all around. What are they saying? I don't know. I mean, we don't see that kind of stuff, but that's kind of stuff that a lot of law enforcement they just completely missed the boat on. And I hope they go to that extreme effort. And to me, it's not extreme. It's just doing your basic case solving efforts by doing that. So because that's how I've won so many cases by getting those kind of statements from from witnesses of somebody that's falsely accusing a client of mine of something, and their story just doesn't add up. They say all these kind of weird things and inconsistent things. You'll find huge inconsistencies that you can just drive a truck through and prove that the whole story was concocted and made up. Judy Walkup is saying Harvey was okay with the suicide pact Donna had mentioned. Yeah, I mean that's just why would you admit that? That's another indicator of guilt right there. I think besides flight, your efforts to die. I mean, it's just so strange behavior. Just so much in consistency with someone that's guilty. Joe Indy's saying Rashomon comparing Donna to his mother. What the heck? Yeah, I mean that was just he's just trying to make her sound nice and sympathetic, but it's not going to work at trial. Yeah, Amber C, I remember that. You're saying that there was a tapped conversation between Donna and Charlie where they talked about telling Harvey about the bump. He was so stressed that he called in sick to work the next day. I think yeah, you're talking about Harvey on that. So yeah, I think that that sounds familiar. Yeah, he was very upset about it. And that's not to say he wasn't involved in it either, right? It's not like they told him the first time. So yeah, that'd be a good countering thing to rebut what Charlie said on the stand that he told his dad at the Matsuri restaurant for the first time about the extortion. The two is asking when in her interview, why wouldn't Wendy have told her mom to call both Charlie and Robert? Yeah, I mean, I think Robert was treated as a second class family member, the black sheep of the family. So that's probably why um, that would have happened in a normal setting if they're innocent. But in this case, he wasn't part of the murder plot. So why would you want to tell Robert? Because you start asking him questions, the very questions they didn't want to answer. So that's uh, that's another angle of it. So I think it's not as quite as compelling because they were somewhat had some daylight and distance between them. But yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you? It's your brother and whatnot. But yeah, they didn't want inquisitive minds that were that close to him asking questions. So definitely another sign of guilt. Charlie Girl's asking, do I think Harvey was worried about being arrested while as Don? He should have been. Yeah, I agree. I mean, he was standing there. I think he was like, okay, it looks like just Donna, not me. So, okay, whew, probably really relieved. Jenny Black saying, Carl, do you think Charlie is angry that his parents bought a one-way ticket to Vietnam the day after his guilty verdict and didn't want him to know about? Yeah, I don't know when they bought the actual ticket, but I suspect there's back channel conversation under tree client privilege that we know about that Rashbaum maybe told them and said, hey, look, your jail call's being recorded. So your mom didn't want you to tell you directly, but they're looking at fleeing the country. And maybe Charlie told them to tell them that they look, you need to flee the country. Don't wind up like me. Don't make my same mistake I did. Listen to your gut. Mom and dad hit the road, get out of here, get the first flight you can out of here and get over to Vietnam. I got it all set up there for you. Intolerant is asking, wouldn't it be more cost effective just to charge Harvey with conspiracy and other lesser charges just to get him 20 or 30-year sentence? Well, the thing is, you're going to present the same degree of evidence. And if you know you have the evidence to convict him of the more serious, why wouldn't you go with the more serious? Plus, what happens is the prosecutors, it's very common practice. They tend to charge everything they can the max possible and even go over the top because what they're trying to do is use that as charge bargain leverage. And so the defendant will have their attorney to try to negotiate down. So it's like, okay, we'll plead, drop the murder, and we'll plead to the lesser, right? So that'll, if you don't have the higher charge, the murder charge, then you're less inclined to have somebody wanting to plead guilty on a 20 or 30-year sentence. So that's why you never, as a prosecutor, want to undercharge. Yeah, a day is asking or saying that Rashomon is circling around over Harvey for another meal with dollar signs. Yeah, I think. I mean, if he they would if he'd represent him as well, I mean, that would be really the most rare thing I've never heard of. Chloe's mom is asking they absolutely refuse to come to court for their subpoenas for some reason. That Georgia let it slide. Can you explain why? I think because there's a couple of issues there. One, and I've said this before, but I'm going to make this really quick for you guys. And they were on the witness list for the defense, and so if the prosecutors had them also on their list, but they've never interviewed them, this is a chance for them to compel their testimony and interview them, and that's why they decided to do that. Excuse me. And so what happened was, from what it looks like to me, is that, and from what I heard from what I saw in the emails, there, Descalzo never was even asked by the by Rashbaum if it's okay to put him on the witness list. She was surprised by that from what it sounded like in the emails to Georgia. So from that, it looked like the they were caught off guard, and so Rashbaum did not want Harvey and Donna to testify in Charlie's trial. He's represented all three of them, so through this whole time, he's intimately aware of how they're all three are involved in this, and he's representing all three, which is so bizarre. And so they they have Descalzo represent the mom and dad at that point. So what I think is really going on is the prosecutor did not decide to call them as witnesses, because you do have with subpoenaed testimony where they have that use and derivative use immunity enacted. If you subpoena them, then you got to have more firewalls, and can't be involved in prosecuting them if there's the information that you want to prosecute them outside of what they admit to in their court testimony. So I think I think they thought it was a cleaner kill. They got enough information to present to the jury to get a solid conviction against Charlie. So that's why the prosecution wasn't worried about it. Barb 417 saying, why wasn't Sigfredo Garcia called to stand? Because he wasn't willing to do so. And he never had a proffer and asked for a proffer to give to the government. He's not trying to reduce his sentence at all. And so that's why they couldn't call him as a witness. If they don't know what he's going to say, and he's just going to deny everything. So you're not going to want to call a witness on a situation like that unless you know what they're going to say. Good question from Thunder Road Queen. Will they be questioning Harvey before Donna's trial? If he's being called as a witness by the defense, then they'll do the exact same thing. They'll put her in a request to subpoena to have him show up to the Miramar, Florida FBI office, and at that point, they're going to go ahead and do a deposition on him. So if they don't have him on the witness list, and let's say he's not on the defense witness list, he's on the prosecution witness list, and yeah, I would assume they're going to do that as well. They're not going to call him cold without having a deposition in advance and know what he's going to say. I just look at some more questions here. Easiest are ones with red. Aunt Nancy is saying, what are with the chance of Wendy and Harvey being arrested the same? I just don't think they will be. I would like to see that, but I just don't see it happening. I think Wendy's going to be next, then Harvey last. All right. Please don't call anybody a bum. I would hope we can use some other word. It's ironic is asking how long does it take for electronics to be analyzed? I think it's not the electronics so much, but I think they're going back and they're trying to see if they can get like all the emails maybe that they didn't get before. Maybe they're doing a search for Charlie's emails, phone records, and that kind of stuff that they might not have done before. As I understand though, they did get all the cell phone data for all the Adelsons when they initially did the request for Wendy and the hitman and Charlie. Sharon Joy is saying, does Harvey have his lawyer? Well, he had that Maricel Descalzo. He was representing Harvey and Donna, but then she withdrew from Donna, but she didn't have to do a formal withdrawal for Harvey because Harvey was never charged. So you only make a notice of appearance on a case that is actually a case at trial. So if somebody's just merely a suspect and want to be interviewed by the police, you don't have to file anything with any court. That's how it works in America anyway. So Cat Love's asking, why can't he visit Hug Donna in jail? Because that's the jail rules. There's no visitors allowed. Leslie is asking about, does a search warrant of Don Harvey's residence include a safe? I recall Georgia asking Wendy about whether her parents had a safe and there was a stack of money with her name on it. And yeah, I can't recall that, Leslie. So if somebody else wants to jump in, it sounds vaguely familiar, but I just can't remember specifically that question about a stack of money with her name on it being there. Maya's asking, how do you find out if you're on a flight list? Yeah, I think you mean a no-fly list, meaning for Wendy. I don't think you can find that out. I don't think it's a database that DHS has that they should call it, find out if someone's on there. Sharon Eisenstein is asking, do I think that Donna thought about being stopped at the airport meant she'd just go home, no arrest? No, I don't think so. I know Dr. G said that on some channel that he thought that she wasn't that surprised by the arrest because she thought she was going to bond out and go home right away. But no, I think her talking to a lawyer, that's the whole reason that they decided to flee, was because if she gets arrested, she's not going to bond out. And so therefore she was thinking, might as well just get it over with. All right, my fate is set for now. And my only chance of seeing freedom again is if I get acquitted at trial. SRQ is asking, do I think Harvey told the cops they were leaving to get Donna at the airport and he already worked something out? I don't think so at all. I think he's not going to offer up his hand. That's what happens with co-conspirators. They're not, you know, if they're not charged, they're not willing to run to the law enforcement and offer themselves up. Just don't see it happening that way. F some is saying if Wendy gets arrested, can she decide who will get custody if they run out of money? By then, will she have to get a public defender? I think in Florida they're going to let the Child Protective Services get involved in that and decide where the kids go, and they try to always reunite them with family members. So maybe if it was not the Markels, then it would be maybe Robert up in New York. And if they run out of money by then, will she have to get a public defender? I just don't. I don't think they're going to run on money that much that they're not going to be able to afford a lawyer. And if they couldn't, though, yeah, you would get a public defender. But I don't think they would allow that to happen. They wouldn't trust a public defender. Yeah, Josephine, I brought this up before. Isn't it true that the Adelsons had assets to avoid having judgment that the courts will reverse that? No, they wouldn't reverse it. What I think was also important is that what I remember hearing is that in 2016, when the hitman got arrested, that's when they went scrambling to put everything in asset protection mode. And that's something I'd bring up as a prosecutor, how they're acting guilty for that. That's another sign of guilt, I would say. Granted, innocent people, if they're worried about being set up and falsely accused, they could do that as well. But I think it's enough probative value that I would try to bring that up as a prosecutor as well. Katrina's asking, let's say Harvey became aware at the time of the phone call that when Donna said he was too sick to work, not coming forward itself, is that a crime? No, it's not a crime if you don't know, if you don't report a crime in most jurisdictions. The military failure to report can be that, or if you got to do something to help hide it and cover it up or pay. So like giving if he knew about it at that time, he knew Katie was involved, and that would be the kind of thing that would implicate him. So Jam Fusco is saying Rashbaum said if Donna or Charlie flipped on each other, that they would consult with his ethics attorney. What would the right answer be? They're innocent. Why would they flip? Yeah, that's sort of a strange answer, I would say. But it's what he would do, obviously. But yeah, to admit that you would go down that road, there's a possibility of guilt being there. So that's a surprising statement. I did not see that part of it if it happened. So I trust you're accurate on that. Istanbul TR saying that maybe the prosecution can make a deal with Charlie in return for lesser charges against Harvey. Yeah, my understanding is from, and I'm not a Florida lawyer, but my understanding is it's sort of like the federal system there in Florida where you have it where the person can cooperate, assist in the prosecution of another, and then after that, they can have a credit. The prosecution can do a motion to give credit to have the sentence reduced. And like in the federal trial, that's even if there's a mandatory minimum life without parole. I've had a client like that before, where they had life without parole in federal court, and by cooperating, the sentence was significantly reduced. So, but there was no guarantee of it ahead of time. The state made a motion and argument. I made the argument of a certain amount of sentence, and the judge made the ultimate call. So I think from what I understand, it's going to be the same way there in Florida. It's not like they're going to throw out the conviction altogether. They're just going to reassess the sentence. All right, so we have here Debbie. Debbie M. Do you think the boys will look to emancipation before turning 18? Well, I would think that They don't have to because I'm thinking all the Adelsons are going to be bagged up and confined at that point. So they'll be back with people that weren't part of this murder plot. So hopefully they don't have to be emancipated at that time. I would hope that they would get their name changed back to Markel before they turn 18 as well. I think that would be a step in the right direction for justice. But at the flip side of that, there's a lot of brainwashing that can occur. I mean, think about the years of brainwashing, and so it's going to be really. I would say they have to go into in very intensive counseling that people know how to counsel the adolescents through that if they've been basically through some kind of brainwashing type of cult setting where their whole realities is completely distorted. Everything's a lie, and so many things are stripped from them besides just the murder of their dad. Brady Star's asking, can the people or person who set up their irrevocable trust access the money in the trust? Yeah, you can, and that's the beauty of it is you can get access to it, but it's not technically in your name, and so other people can't sue you and collect on a trust that's in its own standalone legal entity name, and therefore that's the umbrella protection that the folks that are part of the trust have. But like I said, that'd be interesting. I've never heard of that before. But if there could be like a piercing the trust protections by a conviction of a murder, I think that would be an awesome thing to have passed in all 50 states. Yeah, it was Denise Williams. I guess I'm way behind. Ron Nielsen's asking the fact that Rashbaum feels it's important to engage with social media and show his cards to prosecution. How many hung juries before the prosecution drops case? Well, it's all a matter of what the prosecution feels about how strong they want to go forward on the case. I know a former boss of mine in the army that was prosecuted in federal court, and he got a hung jury not once, not twice, but three times. Three times he got prosecuted in California, San Diego, and instead of going a fourth time, the prosecution was willing to go a fourth time. He cut a deal with them and got convicted and sentenced. So it was uh, it was sad to see that happen, and the guy was super smart, sort of like the Adelson type of situation as well. Why would you just throw your life away like that? Yeah, the guy was a Georgetown law graduate as well. Law and Lit saying, won't defense for Harvey try to make a big deal about Donna saying the bomb was about two of us, meaning her and Charlie? Yeah, of course they would try to do that, but there's other evidence that overwhelms that. She was just trying to limit the conversation to just him thinking about what they two had done the most work on. So I think that's why she was trying to not be so explicit as to say, well, it's a thing that all four of us were involved in. So she was hoping to give him clues without actually coming out and saying it. I already talked about why Harvey and Donna did not have to testify in the trial. Chinook Queen is asking, do I think it's abusive for the Adelsons to involve the kids in their plot, claiming that they may have thrown the remote at the TV? And yeah, I mean, that's just, yeah, that is, I guess that is involving them in that. And so It's yeah, it's I don't really know what to tell you about that. That's I mean, if they're not, who else are going to blame it on, right? Otherwise, Wendy would have to describe how it broke. How is she going to describe how it broke? Is the easiest answer to get away with it if she did intentionally break it is to say the kids did it. But yet the kids are so young, could they really apply that kind of force and velocity on an object to do that big of a shattered um, hit against the screen like Jeff Lacasse described? Peace Baby's asking, would like to know if Harvey's visited either one of them. And so nobody can visit Donna except an attorney, okay, or part of an attorney team. And the the interesting thing would be, I think this came up before, if Wendy signed up as part of the defense team for Donna, would she be able to see her mom? Possibly, but I guarantee you, even if that was allowed, if there was an objection for that, as because she's not an indicted co-conspirator yet. She's an unindicted co-conspirator. So I think they would have to let that probably happen. But she's not going to want to see her mom. She's not going to want to set foot in Tallahassee unless she's subpoenaed. And so she's not going to see her mom until she actually goes to trial and testifies for the state. Patricia S. is saying Ms. Kappelman accused Adelsons of financing Katie's defense. Well, she wanted to find out who was. She was suspecting that was the case. And then there was a in-camera inspection by Judge Hankerson, and he found that there wasn't a defense paid for by the Adelsons. But as I've said before in other videos, that is something that they could have had set up as an LLC or done other things to hide the fact that they're paying for it. And because the prosecution didn't get to challenge them and call witnesses or scrutinize it, we'll never know for now for the coming years. But ultimately, that may come out sometime if they release the in-camera sealed records. Yeah. So you said they're incentivized to have Katie reject a plea offer? Question mark. Yeah, if they paid for it, which I think there's very strong indicators that was, and it just sounds like it's so bizarre to have three attorneys representing somebody on such a disastrous loser of a case. So yeah, it is very shocking, and it's it's the worst case of representation I've ever seen for what you were offered, and you compare that to what the eventual outcome was. It's you can't get any worse than that. You got a get out of jail free card, and then you're doing life without parole. And you had three lawyers defending you, and that's how you wound up. I've never heard such a horror story like that. So yeah, that's another reason why this case is so interesting. You got the worst horror story of how a case went from good option to bad outcome, and you got three lawyers. So that's the worst I've ever heard of. And then Charlie's defense story of this double extortion. It's the worst, laughable, ridiculous defense I have ever seen, and had no chance of success whatsoever. And so there you have it. And in this murder case with the Adelsons, look how much crazy stuff you get. I mean, there's a lot of crazy stuff besides that. Even if you look at the fact that Sigfredo Garcia won't roll over, that's really a bizarre one as well. Joe Indy's saying, "What do your thoughts regard to Rashomon telling Joel that their trial strategy worked?" Laughable. Yeah, I mean, he just he probably wasn't thinking about what he said or something like that, or it just I mean, it's just how's that doing good for you? That's just wow. I don't I'm not sure if I saw that part of it or not, but yeah, that's just really he's up there to give some kind of pitch for his client, so he's got to say stuff that's even ridiculous, because if he starts talking truth is not on his side. So that's what winds up happening is you go into some completely ridiculous statement like that. Jim Parsons saying, what about Harvey's guilt when he and Charlie had a conversation at the sushi restaurant? Yeah, that's the Matsuri one, and I already talked about that earlier. So yeah, that was very incriminating for him. There was no conversation about the bomb. That's what Charlie's trying to say. That's the first time he told his dad about the bump, and he told his mom when it happened. I mean, as soon as when the extortion happened, right after the murder. So that's just so ridiculous. And they would have Harvey would have freaked out. He'd have been talking loud. He'd been picked up on tape if he found out that there was an extortion attempt. And they threatened his life and all the Ailsons' lives, and and just going to happen in a whisper. There wasn't enough time in the parts where you couldn't really hear the conversation that to describe all those kind of details and a normal human reaction to that kind of thing. So it was all manufactured, complete lies by Harvey. Mel is saying Charlie's testimony was ridiculous, but what other defense did he have? Well, because there's going to be a similar type of version of it for Donna's. I'm not going to get into that at all. So I'm not here to help the defense. I'm here to talk about justice for the Markels because that's what the truth is, right? MK Villaverde is saying yes, it was just disrespectful to everyone. Charlie's total fabricated testimony was awful. Yeah, I mean it was just complete disaster, hot mess. I would like there was zero chance of that anybody buying that story really of being a any jury that didn't have some other agenda, right? Nasdaq baby's asking, how did Sigfredo know Katie was eating that night at Yardbird with Charlie? Yeah, that's why there's a doctor in Florida I've talked to that knows this case, a lot of details, and maybe it did. She was of the opinion that maybe this didn't happen July 1st, like they sort of like maybe conspired among their attorneys to make up, and that this is something that was just an excuse for the July 1st call from Sigfredo to Harvey. So I don't know what the truth on that is. And there's some conversations today I saw, and there was discussion. Well, maybe how do we know Harvey wasn't up there and drove up there when he got done cleaning out a room and in the home there, and that he was not up there for like the 10 days she was up there during the murder, and that Donna drove up by herself. So I don't have any direct confirmation that as to his whereabouts, but I think the cell phone records could indicate that. So Brady starts asking, could you give a guess on the cost of attorney state? Unless, I mean, I would think that on a murder case where you guys spend so much time on it for Charlie, I can't imagine doing it less than $1 million or close to that. Or, I mean, I would say if he's with all the money they had, why wouldn't you go for 1.5? And then they probably maybe had a lesser amount for Donna. So, but you're talking about, also between what they funneled out for the custody arrangement that I think you probably hear that's Leo. Stella Bella saying it. Dateline wasn't so great. 2020 was worse. Yeah, I think that's what I heard. I think 2020 or Dateline at least covered some with Epstein, where he's sort of walking back his statements that when he wasn't involved in this. Gerald Reichert saying, why did the Adelsons need a white collar crime lawyer? And I think that's because they were familiar with him, and I think they had some previous dealings with him, and he's also Jewish, so maybe they had some kind of Jewish connections, and so not sure, but yeah, for a violent crime, a white collar person really doesn't have that kind of experience. But Rashbam did say he tried a bunch of them as a prosecutor, so if you have that as under your belt as a prosecutor, I guess that's very beneficial. All right, just looking for questions here. Jill 10 like saying it's probably not a popular take. It's probably easier to convict Charlie and Donna with a trail of calls and texts, things you can see. It would be tough. Could be tough with Harvey unless prosecution has more. Well, I know they have more, and they already got the records there from the search of their phones and their iPads and whatnot. So there's going to be more there. So there's no doubt from my experience, from what I've seen of this case, that I wouldn't have any problems taking Harvey to trial. That's for sure. And like I said, I just go back to the Murdo case where there was like all these lawyers. I mean, there's so many people talking about how Clayton Waters had messed up the case and he was doing bad. And I was like, what are they talking about? It's just like he's going down. There's no doubt. There was no doubt. Just like Charlie, slam dunk. SB74 saying, why would Wendy lie about driving down Trescott? Her statement about encountering the tape right at Centerville is absurd. It's almost a mile down a windy street. Totally. I mean, that's like a blatant lie. And she even tried to deny it when questioned on it. And so, yeah, it's just bizarre. I mean, I would just, if that was my client saying stuff like that, I'd be cringing. Definitely cringe moment as if I was her lawyer and I had a client talking like that. Yeah, it's already 9 o'clock. Okay, so I'm gonna pick just a couple more questions here. T.S. Jackson's asking, do I think Charlie's crazy enough to testify on Donna's behalf? Well, that's really up to the lawyers to do that, make that decision. So uh, it's not Charlie's call. It's going to be the lawyers. Well, Charlie maybe want to, but ultimately it should be the lawyers. But could Charlie be the one to demand it or whatever? But that's as I've said before. I don't see Charlie being called by Roshbaum. So and I doubt the prosecution will call, but I'm just telling you from my perspective as an attorney, I would never want a co-conspirator to testify because I called them unless they're innocent. I was trying to bring out some really good information. And but that's just something I would tell you most criminal defense lawyers would agree with on, but there's always outliers. So the risk of Charlie coming across. I mean, Charlie would definitely sink it for Donna. So if he wants to call Charlie, have at it. I'd be thrilled. I'd be thrilled as a prosecutor to be able to cross examine either Harvey or Donna or both. Got the cat showing up here. I guess they're wanting me off here. So Jason Truth is asking, is there anyone aware of any criminal history with Harvey? No, if he had a criminal history that was any significance, he would not be a licensed dentist that was able to retire a few years ago. Ashira is asking, can Harvey be prosecuted on circumstantial evidence? Yeah, I mean, they almost didn't call Katie to the stand, and that was all circumstantial type evidence against Charlie, right? So yeah, circumstantial evidence is awesome to have for whatever side. If you got the truth in your side, a lot of circumstantial evidence is going to all pull it together. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. So thanks for supporting Justice for Markel's, and y'all have a good night. Be safe. And I guess if the game's still on, you still watch the game. But thanks for your pursuit of justice for Markel's, and we're going to have more justice coming here quick in the near future. And I look forward to that, as I'm sure you do. Thanks. Have a good night.